Dad perfect events. My son sat at my kitchen table and told me I was moving into assisted living and he was selling my house. I didn't argue, I didn't fight. I just signed the papers he put in front of me. For 2 weeks. He and his wife celebrated their brilliant plan. When the buyers showed up with the money, my lawyer showed them my surprise. Good day, folks. My name is Charlie Pierce. I'm 68 years old, and I want to tell you what happened when my own son tried to steal my house right out from under me. I've lived in this house for 42 years. Let me tell you what that means before I get into the meat of this story. 42 years. I painted that kitchen yellow back in 1985 because my wife Dorothy said yellow kitchens make people happy, and I believed her. Every morning for 4 decades, I've sat at this same oak table drinking coffee and looking at those yellow walls. The paint's faded some, got a few scuff marks where the chairs bump against it, but it's still Dorothy's yellow. I planted those oak trees in the front yard the summer our son Jason was born, and every fall they drop their leaves right on schedule, more reliable than some people I know. The mailbox at the end of the driveway still has the dent from where Jason hit it learning to ride his bike. I never fixed it. Figured it was part of the story. Dorothy passed away last March. Heart attack, quick and clean, the way she would have wanted it. We'd owned this house together since 1982, bought it when Jason was 3 and I was making decent money as an insurance supervisor. After she died, everything transferred to me through probate. My name only, Charlie Pierce, sole owner of 4417 Maple Street, Columbus, Ohio. Worth about $412,000 according to the county assessor, though I never thought of it in dollar terms until all this started. For the first few months after Dorothy's funeral, Jason was the perfect son, called every Sunday at 2 p.m. sharp, came by for Thanksgiving with his wife Lisa, bringing store-bought pie and acting like he'd made it himself. She's a real estate agent, by the way. That detail's gonna matter later. I made the stuffing from scratch, Dorothy's recipe with the sage and celery she always insisted on, and Lisa said it was wonderful. I noticed she only took 1 bite, pushed the rest around her plate, but I filed that away without thinking too much about it. The house felt too quiet those first months. I'd catch myself setting 2 coffee cups in the morning, then putting 1 back. I'd hear Dorothy's voice calling from the garden and turn to see empty rose bushes, but I was managing. My pension from 35 years at Mutual of Columbus, plus Dorothy's teacher's retirement and Social Security, covered everything fine. The house was paid off, taxes were reasonable, and I knew every creaky board and running toilet by heart. Then January rolled around, and Jason started asking different kinds of questions. He'd sit in that same kitchen chair where he'd eaten cereal before school for 15 years, looking around like he was seeing the place for the first time. "Dad, what do you think this place is worth now, with the market the way it is?" He said it like he'd been practicing in the mirror, trying to sound casual. "A house this size is really a lot for one person, don't you think?" Lisa would nod along with everything he said, real enthusiastic, like they'd rehearsed this conversation beforehand. She'd walk through my rooms while Jason talked, running her hand along the doorframe, looking up at the ceiling, tapping the walls with her knuckles. Professional habit, I figured, but it made me feel like furniture being appraised. I told him straight up I was managing fine. The house wasn't too big, it was exactly the right size for a man who'd lived in it for 42 years. Dorothy's garden still needed tending. The basement workshop where I'd taught Jason to use a hammer and saw wasn't going anywhere. This wasn't just shelter, it was home. He didn't seem to be listening to a word I said. February came around, and Lisa started showing up more often. She'd arrive with casseroles I never asked for, stay for coffee I didn't want to share, and ask questions that felt more like a property assessment than conversation. "Charlie, this really is a lovely lot," she'd say, standing at the back window looking out at Dorothy's rose garden. But the way she said it had nothing to do with how lovely it was. She was calculating square footage. "Have you ever thought about downsizing?" She asked me once, real casual, like she was asking about the weather. There are some beautiful senior communities now, really modern, with activities and medical support right there. I told her I hadn't thought about it, didn't need to think about it. She smiled like someone who wasn't done asking yet. Around that time, I started noticing other things. Jason would pick up mail from my kitchen counter, flip through it like he had a right to. Lisa would open my refrigerator without asking, peer inside, shake her head like she disapproved of my grocery choices. Small things, but they added up. One afternoon in late February, I caught Jason in my home office, going through papers on my desk. Bank statements, insurance documents, property tax records. "Just helping you organize, Dad," he said. When I walked in, "Some of this paperwork is pretty old." I told him I'd organized my own paperwork for 68 years and managed just fine. He laughed, patted my shoulder like I was a child who'd said something amusing. "Of course you have. I'm just saying you don't have to do everything yourself anymore. Lisa and I are here to help. That word started showing up a lot in our conversations. Help with the bills, help with maintenance, help making decisions. Like I'd suddenly become incompetent the day Dorothy died. Then March hit, and Jason sat down at this very kitchen table where he'd done his homework for 12 years, where I'd signed his permission slips and helped him with his math problems, and told me I was moving into Meadowview assisted living. He wasn't asking, he was telling me. The morning was cold and gray, typical March weather in Ohio. I'd made coffee in the same pot Dorothy and I had used for 20 years, sat in the same chair I'd occupied every morning since we bought the place. The kitchen smelled like coffee and the faint scent of Dorothy's lavender soap that still lingered in the dish towel drawer. Jason walked in without knocking, like he owned the place already. Lisa followed behind him, carrying a manila folder thick with papers. They both looked nervous but determined, like people about to do something they knew was wrong but had convinced themselves was necessary. "Dad, we've talked to some people. The facility is very nice. You'll have your own room, activities, medical support nearby." He stopped here, and I watched him pick his next words real careful, like a man choosing the right tool for a job. "Honestly, a house this size is just too much for one person at your age. It's not practical." Lisa sat right beside him, hands folded on the table, playing the reasonable one. She was wearing a blue blazer that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month, and her nails were perfectly painted. Everything about her screamed success and efficiency. "We just want what's best for you, Charlie," she said, using my first name like we were old friends instead of family connected by marriage. And honestly, maintaining a property this size with the utilities and upkeep and property taxes, it's a lot of financial pressure for someone on a fixed income. Maybe she believed what she was saying. That's the scary part about some lies. The person telling them has convinced themselves it's the truth. But I'd been in insurance for 35 years. I knew when someone was selling me something I didn't need. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He was 45 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly pension, driving an Audi that probably ran $60,000 new. His marketing job downtown paid him well enough to afford a house in Dublin, the fancy suburb where all the young professionals wanted to live. But I also knew he and Lisa had stretched themselves thin buying that house, probably took out a mortgage bigger than they should have. I looked at my kitchen, yellow as it had always been, with the coffee ring stains on the counter and the little chip in the ceramic tile where Jason had dropped a toy truck when he was 7. I thought about Dorothy, about 42 years of Saturday morning coffee at this table, about the rose garden she'd planned and planted and tended until the day she died. And I didn't say anything, not yet. But something inside me shifted. Something that had been sleeping woke up and started paying attention. I'd raised this boy. I knew his voice when he was excited about something he wanted for Christmas. I knew his face when he was trying to avoid telling me about a bad report card. I knew his mannerisms when he was working up the nerve to ask for money for college books or car repairs. What I saw on his face that March morning wasn't concern for his old man, it was calculation. He was looking at $412,000 worth of real estate and trying to figure out the most efficient way to get his hands on it. I wasn't angry yet, I wasn't scared. But for the first time in months, I was wide awake and thinking clearly. "I need to think about this," I told them. "This is a big decision." Jason's face relaxed. Lisa smiled and patted my hand like I was a good boy who just agreed to take his medicine. "Of course, Dad, take all the time you need. We just want you to know the options are there." They left me with a glossy brochure for Meadowview and promises to call in a few days. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time after their car pulled out of the driveway. The coffee went cold. The morning light changed to afternoon shadows. Outside, Mrs. Henderson's dog barked twice and then went quiet. I went through it methodically, the way I'd learned to handle problems in 35 years of insurance work. What's the problem? What are the facts? What can be done? The problem was simple enough to name. My son had decided I was a resource to be managed instead of a person to be respected. This house, my house, Dorothy's and mine, had become an asset in Jason's mind. An asset worth $412,000 that would be a lot more liquid without me living in it. Meadowview assisted living wasn't a kindness, it was a business transaction. Get Dad into managed care, sell the house, split the proceeds. Probably Jason figured he deserved it after all the worry I'd caused him by continuing to live independently. Here were the facts. I was 68 years old, not 88. I was widowed, but not helpless. I had no siblings living. My brother Carl had died of cancer 3 years back. My closest friend Jerry had moved to Florida after his wife passed, but we still talked every week. I had neighbors I liked but didn't confide in, except for Mrs. Henderson next door who'd lived there almost as long as Dorothy and I had. Jason was my only child, and he'd just told me in the careful language of people who believe they're being reasonable that my life as I knew it was over. But here was the fact Jason had apparently forgotten or chosen not to consider. The house was mine, completely, legally, indisputably mine. My name on the deed, my signature required for any sale. I wasn't confused, I wasn't incompetent, and I hadn't agreed to anything. That evening, Jason called to check in and see how I was processing everything. I told him I was thinking it over, that Meadow View looked nice in the pictures. He sounded relieved, like a salesman who'd just gotten past the customer's first objection. I'm glad you're being open-minded about this, Dad. I know change is hard, but sometimes it's for the best change. Like this was some natural progression instead of him trying to railroad me out of my own home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark listening to the house settle around me, all the little creaks and hums a place makes after 40 years of weather and seasons. The furnace clicking on in the basement, the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the oak trees outside my bedroom window rustling in the March wind. I thought about my options. I could say no flat out and dig in my heels. But I'd seen how Jason talked to me that morning. Patient and managerial, like I was a child who needed guidance. A flat refusal would just start a longer fight. He'd escalate, maybe bring in lawyers, maybe doctors, start talking about my capacity to make decisions. That word capacity, it's a weapon they use against older folks, and I wasn't naive enough to think my own son wouldn't use it if he got desperate enough. I could call a lawyer right away. That was tempting. But if Jason found out I had legal counsel, he'd get careful, strategic. I needed him to think he'd already won. I needed him sloppy and overconfident, making mistakes. So lying there in the dark in the house I'd lived in for 42 years, listening to Dorothy's wind chimes on the back porch, I made my first decision. I'd play along. I wouldn't fight where he could see it. I'd give Jason exactly what he wanted to see, a tired old man who'd come around to accepting his son's wisdom. I'd sign what he gave me to sign. I'd visit Meadow View and say it looked fine. I'd let them celebrate while I figured out how to protect what was mine. But first, I needed information. Next morning, I drove to the public library on Elm Street. I've always liked libraries, quiet, organized, full of information that belongs to everybody equally. The Columbus Metropolitan Library downtown is one of those modern buildings with glass walls and computers everywhere, but the Elm Street branch is old school. Wood shelves, creaky floors, the smell of books, and that particular library quiet that makes you want to whisper. I asked the young woman at the reference desk for anything she had on Ohio property law, real estate transfers, power of attorney. She was maybe 25 with purple streaks in her hair and the kind of helpful attitude you don't see much anymore. She handed me a stack of materials without asking why, which I've always appreciated about librarians. They give you information and let you figure out what to do with it. I spent 4 hours reading at one of those heavy oak tables they don't make anymore. Took notes in the little spiral notebook I always carry in my shirt pocket, the same kind I'd used for 35 years taking statements from accident victims and insurance claimants. By the time I left, I understood several things I hadn't before. There's something called a life estate that lets you transfer a deed while keeping the right to live there until you die. There's something else called a remainder interest. Most importantly, Ohio has specific protections for elderly property owners that Jason probably didn't know existed. The state takes elder financial abuse seriously, and what Jason was planning could easily fall into that category if I could prove he was using deception or coercion. I also knew I needed help, not just information from books, but a real live person who understood the legal system. A real estate attorney who wasn't connected to Jason in any way, who wouldn't feel obligated to keep things in the family or suggest I work things out with my son. I found her in the phone book. Yes, I still use the phone book, and I'm not ashamed of it. Her name was Patricia Williams, and her advertisement was small and straightforward. Real estate, estate planning, elder law, serving Columbus families for 22 years. No fancy graphics, no promises she couldn't keep. Just a woman who'd been doing this work long enough to know what she was talking about. I called from the library parking lot, sitting in my 2018 Honda Civic with the heat running. Her secretary gave me an appointment for Thursday afternoon. I drove home, made a sandwich, and when Jason called that evening to ask how I was adjusting to the idea, I told him I was thinking it over, and that Meadow View did seem like a pleasant place from the brochure. He sounded relieved, like a man who thought the hard part was behind him. I'm really glad you're being reasonable about this, Dad. I know it's not easy, but I think you'll be happier in the long run. Reasonable. Happy. All these words that meant I was supposed to go along with what he wanted and be grateful for it. I hung up and sat in Dorothy's favorite recliner, which I'd never moved from its spot by the front window. The fabric was worn smooth on the arms where she'd rested her hands during 20 years of evening TV. I could still smell her lavender hand lotion if I concentrated hard enough. Sitting there in her chair, I thought, Jason, my boy, you just made a serious mistake. You mistook my quiet for surrender. Thursday afternoon, Patricia Williams's office was exactly what I'd hoped for. Small, clean, practical. Located in a converted house on High Street. Nothing fancy, but professional. The waiting room had chairs that looked comfortable enough to sit in for more than 5 minutes, magazines that weren't 2 years old, and coffee that didn't taste like it had been sitting around since morning. Patricia Williams herself was maybe 55, compact and efficient, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck and the manner of someone who'd spent 20 years listening to family problems without losing either her patience or her sense of humor. She shook my hand firm and looked me straight in the eye when she talked. "Mr. Pierce, what can I do for you today?" Her office was small but organized, with law books lining one wall and family photos on her desk. 2 daughters, I guessed, both grown. A husband in a fishing hat. People who mattered to her, which told me she understood what I was trying to protect. I told her everything. Dorothy's death, the deed transfer, Jason's kitchen table announcement, Lisa's appraising looks, what I'd read at the library. Patricia listened without interrupting, making notes on a yellow legal pad, asking clarifying questions that showed she understood exactly what was happening. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, tapping her pen against the desk. Then she looked up and said, "Mr. Pierce, you came in here better prepared than most people with law degrees. Let me tell you what your options are." What she told me changed everything. Because the house was entirely in my name, Jason had zero legal authority to sell it or force a sale without my written consent. His talk about arrangements and practical considerations meant exactly nothing in legal terms. I could simply refuse, and there wasn't a thing he could do about it. But refusing wasn't my only option, and it might not be my best one. Patricia confirmed what I'd read about life estates and remainder interests. She also told me about something called a Medicaid-compliant irrevocable trust that would protect the property if I ever did need long-term care down the road. And then she told me about one more thing, a step I could take that would end Jason's scheme so completely and permanently there'd be nothing left for him to try. I could transfer the deed into a trust with a specific named beneficiary who wasn't Jason, someone like the Columbus Community Foundation, which Dorothy and I had supported for years with small donations. The beauty of this approach, Patricia explained, is that it's completely legal, completely irrevocable, and completely outside your son's control. Once the trust is established and the deed is transferred, he can't contest it, can't challenge it, and can't change it. The property would be protected, you'd have the legal right to live there for the rest of your life, and your son's plans would become completely impossible to execute. We talked for 90 minutes. When I left her office, I had a plan that was better and more complete than anything I'd walked in with, and a second appointment scheduled for the following Tuesday to start the paperwork. But I also had something else. For the first time since Jason had sat at my kitchen table and told me my life was changing, I felt like I was the one in control. I drove home that Thursday afternoon feeling like a different man than the one who'd woken up that morning. I made tea, sat at the kitchen table, and thought about what I'd just set in motion. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was playing offense instead of defense. 3 days later, I got the proof I needed that Jason wasn't just being assertive, he was actively lying to me. Patricia had run a title search on my property as a precaution, standard procedure to make sure there weren't any claims or liens I didn't know about. What the search turned up was this. Someone had already contacted 2 real estate agencies in Columbus requesting comparative market analyses on my property. The requests had come from Jason Pierce, identifying himself as the estate representative for 4417 Maple Street. There was no such designation. I hadn't given Jason any power of attorney. He wasn't my estate representative in any legal sense. He'd simply told 2 real estate agencies that he was, and they'd believed him and sent him professional valuations of my home. Patricia showed me the documents in her office. Clean, official letterhead, professional assessments. Both agencies had valued the property at $412,000, exactly what the county said it was worth. Jason had been shopping my house while telling me he was just concerned about my well-being. "This is premature and potentially fraudulent conduct," Patricia said, using the careful language lawyers use when they mean someone's breaking the law but can't prove criminal intent yet. "These are inquiries, not transactions, so we're not talking about criminal fraud, but it shows a clear pattern of deception and unauthorized representation." I thought about calling Jason right then. I could hear his voice already, that patient tone he'd been using. "Dad, I was just getting information, just trying to understand the market, and maybe a man less awake than I'd become would have accepted that explanation. But I'd seen those numbers, $412,000 minus, and I understood now that whatever Jason felt for me, genuine affection or not, it was currently running second to that dollar figure. The following Tuesday, I signed the first round of documents in Patricia's office. Not a word to Jason. That evening, he called to ask if I'd given more thought to Meadowview. I told him I had, that I was warming up to the idea, that the activities director had sounded very nice when I'd called to ask questions. I hadn't called anybody, but Jason didn't know that. He was pleased, relieved, congratulating himself on handling a difficult situation so smoothly. "I'm really glad you're being sensible about this, Dad. I know it's hard, but I think you're going to love it there. Sensible. That was his word for giving up everything I'd worked for so he could cash out. The plan Patricia and I worked out was elegant in its simplicity. I'd continue appearing cooperative while she prepared the real legal work, transferring the property into an irrevocable living trust with me as sole trustee for life, and the Columbus Community Foundation as remainder beneficiary. Jason wasn't named, Lisa wasn't named, nobody in my immediate family was named. The trust included one detail that was Patricia's particular touch. Any sale of the property required not only my signature as trustee, but a secondary confirmation letter from her office, submitted to the title company at least 72 hours before closing. Without that letter, no legitimate title company in Ohio would process the transfer. We filed the trust documents on a Wednesday. The deed was transferred that same afternoon. As of Wednesday, March 15th, Jason couldn't legally sell my house even with my signature because my signature on his documents would be meaningless. The house no longer belonged to Charlie Pierce, the individual. It belonged to the Pierce Family Living Trust, and the terms of that trust were known only to me and Patricia. Jason had scheduled what he called a signing appointment for the following Friday at the offices of a lawyer named Leonard Hayes, downtown in one of those glass towers that charge by the square foot. I planned to attend that appointment. I planned to be cooperative and pleasant right up until the moment the door opened on what I'd actually done. But I didn't make it to Friday undisturbed. Wednesday evening, the same day the trust was filed, Jason appeared at my door without calling first. He hadn't done that since he was a teenager. He was alone, and he wasn't using the patient voice anymore. "Dad," he said, standing in my living room with his coat still on, "I need you to tell me what's going on." I offered him coffee. He declined, which told me how upset he was. Jason never turned down free coffee. "Someone told Lisa you've been going to a lawyer's office downtown. A real estate attorney." He looked at me with something that was trying to be concern but looked more like panic. "Why are you talking to a lawyer, Dad? If you have questions about anything, you come to me." There it was again. You come to me, like I was a child who needed permission to seek advice about my own property. I told him I'd simply wanted independent counsel, that I was getting older and sometimes legal language confused me, and I wanted to make sure I understood what I was signing. He didn't believe me entirely. I could see it in his face. But he couldn't afford not to believe me either, because the alternative was admitting I might be several steps ahead of him. Then Lisa's voice came from the front door. She'd been waiting in the car but apparently decided to join the conversation. She walked into my living room like she owned it, and whatever pretense of casual concern had been in place dissolved completely. "Charlie," she said, using that crisp real estate agent voice, "if you're thinking about doing something complicated with the property, you need to understand it could create problems for everyone involved. Legal problems. Financial problems." She paused, and I watched her choose her next words like weapons. An elderly man living alone, making major legal decisions without consulting his family well, that might raise questions about his judgment, about his capacity to make those kinds of decisions. There it was, the word I'd been waiting for, capacity. I looked at Lisa. I looked at my son, who didn't contradict her, didn't tell her that was going too far, and I said, very clearly, "I'd like you both to leave my house now." The silence that followed surprised all three of us. Jason tried once more, hands up, reasonable face sliding back into place. "Dad, nobody's trying to upset you here. We just want to make sure you're protected." "I'm protected," I said, "and I'll see you Friday at the appointment." After they left, I called Patricia and told her what had happened. "Good," she said. "That means they're worried." Worried people make mistakes? Friday morning arrived gray and cold, typical March weather in Columbus. I put on the blue suit I'd worn to Dorothy's funeral, the one that still fit because I'd always been careful about such things. I drove downtown to Hayes' office in the Huntington building, found parking on the street, and took the elevator to the 12th floor. Patricia was already in the lobby when I arrived, professional and composed, carrying a leather folder thick with documents. We rode the elevator up together without saying much. We both knew what was about to happen. The conference room was all glass and polished wood, the kind of place that charges $500 an hour to impress clients. Hayes sat at the head of a table that probably cost more than my car, surrounded by documents and wearing the confident expression of a man who expected to be done by lunch. Jason and Lisa arrived at exactly 10 a.m., both dressed like they were attending something important. Jason wore his most expensive suit. Lisa had her hair done and carried a purse that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. They looked like people arriving at a celebration. The buyers showed up 5 minutes later, a young couple named the Hendersons, pleasant-looking and clearly nervous about spending a significant portion of their life savings. They brought their own attorney and a cashier's check for $75,000, the down payment Jason had negotiated on the $412,000 sale price. Hayes started the meeting by presenting the purchase agreement and asking me to confirm my identity and ownership of 4417 Maple Street. I confirmed my identity without hesitation. Then I said, before we proceed, I'd like to introduce my attorney, Patricia Williams, who has some important information about the title. The temperature in the room changed. Hayes paused, looking from Patricia to Jason to me. Jason's face went through several expressions before settling on something between confusion and alarm. Patricia placed a single document in the center of the table. In her clear professional voice, she explained that 4417 Maple Street had been transferred into the Pierce Family Living Trust on March 15th, with Charlie Pierce as sole trustee. She noted that the trust terms required her written authorization for any sale submitted to the title company no less than 72 hours prior to closing. She placed the trust document beside the first paper, then the title search, then the filing confirmation from Franklin County, official and date stamped, right where everyone could see it. Hayes was reading fast, his confidence evaporating as he realized his due diligence had been completely inadequate. He hadn't run an independent title search. He'd taken Jason's word about authority to sell and built an entire transaction on assumptions that had just collapsed. Jason stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. Dad, what did you do? I protected my property, I said. You didn't tell me. For the first time in months, Jason sounded like himself instead of the managing, patronizing voice he'd been using. He sounded scared. Lisa said sharply, "Can this be contested?" Hayes said carefully, "The trust appears to be properly formed and legally binding." The Hendersons' attorney leaned over to speak quietly with his clients. They stood up, collected their cashier's check, and left without a word. The door closed with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Jason looked at me with desperation I'd never seen before. "Dad, we can work this out. We can fix this." He wanted to negotiate now, with the buyers gone and his scheme in ruins. Now he wanted to have a conversation. "Jason," I said, and my voice was completely steady. "The house is mine. It's always been mine. It'll stay mine as long as I choose to live in it. If you have questions about what happens after I die, I suggest you consult an estate attorney independently." I picked up my copy of the documents, thanked Patricia, and walked out of that conference room into the March afternoon. The sun was trying to break through the clouds, and the air smelled like spring was finally coming to Ohio. 6 months later, Jason and Lisa are still dealing with the financial mess they created by spending money they didn't have on the assumption my house was already theirs. Jason lost the marketing clients who found out about his family situation. Lisa's real estate license came under review by the state board for her role in the unauthorized property assessments. Me? I'm still in my house, still drinking coffee in Dorothy's yellow kitchen, still tending her rose garden every spring. I've taken up woodworking in the basement shop, joined a men's group at the community center, and started dating a nice woman named Helen, who lost her husband about the same time I lost Dorothy. The house is still worth $412,000 according to the county assessor. But to me, it's worth something you can't put a price on, minus the knowledge that I didn't let anyone take from me what I'd spent 42 years building. Jason calls every few weeks now. We're working on rebuilding something, though. It'll never be what it was. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal back exactly the same. But maybe with time and better choices on his part, we can find our way to something honest. The yellow kitchen still makes me happy, just like Dorothy said it would. And every morning when I sit down with my coffee, I remember that patience isn't surrender. Sometimes it's just a man getting ready to fight back smart instead of fighting back loud. Some battles are worth winning quietly. Family betrayal teaches you that sometimes the people who claim to love you most are willing to sacrifice your dignity for their convenience. Real strength in old age isn't accepting what others think is best for you. It's having the wisdom to protect yourself when those who should protect you won't. The difference between being helped and being managed is respect. And when your own family stops asking and starts telling, it's time to remind them who still owns the deed. Sometimes the best way to teach someone about taking what isn't theirs is to let them think they've won, then show them exactly how much they underestimated you. Age doesn't make you helpless. It makes you experienced enough to spot manipulation before it succeeds. The hardest lesson any parent learns is that love isn't a debt your children owe you, and silence isn't the same as surrender.